The movie begins with the rain beginning to fall in Tokyo as a young girl, Mai, runs home from school. She frantically grabs all her clothes off the line and brings them indoors so they won't get wet. Then she proceeds to make dinner. She's interrupted by a call from the doorway, her older brother, Yukihiro, who's arrived home dripping wet, requesting a towel. When she goes to hand him one, though, she stops in her tracks, stunned to see that her brother isn't alone. He's brought an extremely handsome boy she's never seen before, and she freezes up completely as they make eye contact. She's totally spellbound by him. He smiles at her faintly before the moment is interrupted by Yukihiro, who cuts in, annoyed that she's suddenly spacing out. His friend introduces himself as Nishino Sauda and is apparently just as awestruck by Mai, watching her curiously. Her brother doesn't even notice the vibe between them, and causes her to run away in embarrassment at the situation. Sauda watches her go with interest, even as he follows his friend into the house. Upstairs, Sauda is finishing up stapling together some papers for a school event, while Yukihiro flips through a book. When he asks for help, Yukihiro proclaims it's not his responsibility. He's student council president, so he doesn't do menial work. Sauda accepts his excuse, begrudgingly returning to his work. It's clear which one of them is the hard worker, and we're left wondering how Yukihiro ever got elected. Mai is overhearing the whole conversation between them from the next room, exasperated at her brother's indolence. She is busy ironing, folding her clothes and daydreaming about the conversation they might be having about her. She's instantly developed a crush on Sauda. She's shocked to overhear Sauda call her cute, trying to hold in a scream of delight, and then immediately gets irritated again as Yukihiro makes fun of her, calling her a maidservant. She stomps out of her room, frustrated and wondering whether to barge in and call him out on it. He knows the walls are thin, after all, but decides against it, too embarrassed to say anything in front of her new crush. Later, Mai's downstairs finishing dinner and remembering Sauda's words as he called her cute. Is he just trying to be polite? Does he really feel that way about her? She's trying to focus on getting her chores done, but she's too excited to think about anything else. She comes across their wet shoes in the hallway, in the midst of her daydreaming, and thoughtfully goes to put crushed up paper in them, so they'll dry before Sauda leaves. When the boys eventually come downstairs, Sauda carrying the heavy bags of materials all alone, Yukihiro rolls his eyes at her housewife-like solution, but Sauda is touched by the gesture. At school the next day, Mai and her friends are chatting over lunch. One of the girls proclaims that she's got a boyfriend, and they're confused because she previously didn't have any interest in him. However, she explains that he kept calling her cute, and his persistence eventually changed her mind about him. Mai is quiet, thinking about Sauda's words and feeling on top of the world that the boy she likes said the same thing about her. She's trying to be rational and not read too much into it, but she's only a teenage girl after all, and she can't help it. When she arrives home, she's surprised to find Sauda waiting in the entranceway. He's just as taken aback at her entrance, frantically explaining that he came to see Yukihiro. Embarrassed, he flees the scene and heads upstairs, where he encounters Mai once more. He pauses at the entrance to her brother's room, trying to muster up the courage to ask her name, but fails and instead finds himself asking where the bathroom is. It's hard to tell which one of them is more awkward. In his room, Yukihiro questions whether Sauda is going after his sister. He teases his friend about being terrible with girls when Sauda pleads with him just to tell him her name. Mai is, of course, overhearing the whole thing and screaming with internal embarrassment at the situation, especially when Yukihiro mockingly offers Sauda information about her bra size. She is pleased to hear that despite his good looks, Sauda isn't a ladies' man, but she still doesn't know how to deal with her massive crush. The very next day, Sauda stops by once more and gives Mai a gift, a box of cream puffs. She's delighted by them, but when she reaches out to grab them, her hands touch Sauda's, making her jump and drop the box. Both immediately reach for it, their hands touching again, and then pull back as if electrified. Thoroughly embarrassed, Mai apologizes and rushes into the kitchen with the food, lamenting the fact that he saw her without her hair done and berating her clumsy, girlish actions. Why can't she get a grip on herself around this boy? She walks to school the next day, contemplating how she feels about love as she watches a couple sitting together on a bench. She's never been one to buy into the ideals about teenage dating, but now she can't get Sauda off her mind. She doesn't look where she's going and tumbles over onto the grass. Two boys ride by on bikes, making fun of her choice of underwear and calling her spats as they take off laughing. A moment later, though, Sauda offers her a hand to help her up. She takes it hesitantly, allowing him to ensure she's all right. Then he suddenly runs off into the grass. Curious, she watches him stumbling about until he triumphantly holds up her shoe, which flew off when she fell. She grins and thanks him, finding her confidence for the first time in his presence, thinking that with the way her heart is beating for this boy, her skepticism about love may have been misplaced. Later, Mai is shopping in the city when a friend approaches her and asks her for her study notes. He puts his arm around her endearingly, begging for her help, and she laughs at his desperation. Sauda, crossing the street, happens to catch sight of the situation and completely misunderstands it, his heart plummeting into his stomach as he believes Mai has a boyfriend. He asks Yukihiro about it, who is dismissive of the subject. Sauta rambles on about how experienced and good-looking the guy was. Meanwhile, Mai is listening to everything behind the wall, frustrated at the misunderstanding but unable to go in and say anything. If they find out she's been eavesdropping on them this whole time, it'll be far too awkward. She freaks out about what to do, not knowing how to clear up the situation. Yukihiro, finally bored of listening to Sauta talk, sits up and asks him what he plans to do about it. Is he going to give up on her? Mai has her ear pressed to the wall, eagerly awaiting the response, when she suddenly turns around to see her brother standing, arms folded, in her doorway. Busted. Yukihiro, exasperated at the whole situation, takes them both downstairs to the entryway. He orders them to go to a coffee shop he likes and take a video of the Shiba Inu there. Sauta protests that he has a lot to do, but Yukihiro has a thunderous temper and shoves them both out of the house. Meekly, Mai and Sauta make their way to the cafe, which is full of rescued dogs, and the manager Takebana has an extraordinary personality. He welcomes them in with open arms, dramatically acting out his recollections of his own high school days. Mai points out the particular dog that her brother likes, and the two of them play with it and take the video while waiting for their order. While Sauta is preoccupied with the dog, Takebana nudges Mai, approving of her choice of boyfriend. She's quick to protest that they're not together, but Takebana can tell that her secret smiles reveal how she really feels. On the way home, they chat a little, now finally more comfortable in each other's presence. It seems like Yukihiro's plan worked. Sauta works up the courage to confess, thinking about his chat with Yukihiro earlier, but just as he calls out her name, he has to grab her and pull her quickly away from a passing bicycle. Realizing the position they're in, he jumps backwards, apologizing, and Mai becomes incredibly shy and awkward. Nevertheless, he persists, confessing his feelings for her and saying that despite her boyfriend, he can't give up on her. Mai is thrilled to hear him finally say it out loud, and tentatively explains that she doesn't have a boyfriend, she likes him too. Sauta can't quite believe his luck, reaching out to take her hand, when a group of kids catcall them. They step away from each other, startled, then grin happily. Their love story is truly about to begin. The following day, Sauta calls again at the house, but both are still unsure how to interact. He heads into Yukihiro's room to ask for advice from his friend once more. Her brother is not kind, mercilessly mocking Sauta for not even calling Mai by her first name, still not even knowing it, and being unsure how to speak to his own girlfriend. Sauta, though, isn't sure if they're even together. He never confirmed it with her, even though they spoke about their feelings. Mai, distracted from her homework by the boys' discussion, worries about how to tell Sauta that they're dating. She hadn't realized he was so clueless when it came to romance, but she's not exactly an expert either. She remembers some advice Takebana gave her at the cafe. Perhaps she should start calling him by his first name, to make him feel at ease. No, she couldn't. She's too nervous to try. When they're saying their goodbyes later, with Yukihiro supervising, Sauta still can't summon up the courage. Mai waits breathlessly to hear if he'll try her first name out, but he doesn't. Yukihiro rolls his eyes and walks away in despair. At a later time, Mai returns to the cafe to get some more advice on how to progress their relationship. Takebana at first suggests trying to get into Sauta's personal space a bit more, but Mai feels that that's still too much. So he offers another plan, a way to get everyone around them thinking they're in love, so they'll begin to feel it more themselves. Mai agrees to try out the idea. They go to a couple's cafe, where everyone around them is sitting together, sharing food or cuddling. Sauta looks around in awe, wishing he had the courage to do those things with Mai. However, when they sit down and the waitress brings them their special lovey-dovey couple's parfait, he manages to say entirely the wrong thing. In his haste to make sure Mai is feeling comfortable and not pressured into anything, he denies that they're even a couple at all. Humiliated by his statement, Mai gets up and leaves the cafe, making a lame excuse as Sauta calls out after her. Her plan is in ruins, and she's never been more embarrassed. She runs off to sit in a park alone, but it isn't long before Sauta catches up to her. Out of breath, he apologizes profusely for his misstep, confessing that he doesn't know how to handle these situations and he never meant to hurt her. Mai, of course, already knows this, and is more than willing to accept his apology and offer one of her own. She wishes she was more experienced too. Sauta finally asks her definitively to be his girlfriend, and takes her hand, leading her out of the park as they're ready to embark on this new phase of their budding relationship. Some time later, Mai is making a bento box for herself and for Sauta. Yukihiro comes downstairs and comments on the effort she's going to, before stealing some of the food and walking away. Even though it's a Sunday, Mai has to go into school to supervise the candidates taking the entrance exams. When she gets to school, though, she hears someone's stomach growling from the hallway and takes pity on him, offering him the bento she made for herself. The boy, Itsuki, thanks her for the meal, grateful that she shared it with him, even though Mai is cringing at the messiness of the presentation. She runs off soon after, encouraging him to do his best on the exam, and he smiles to himself as he watches her go. Meanwhile, Sauta is at the dog cafe alone. He notices a book about love on the shelf and picks it up, curious to know how he can impress Mai. It mentions giving gifts, so he contemplates various things he could give to her. As he's leaving, Takebana advises him to keep it simple and believe in the feelings in his heart. Shyly, Sauta listens as Takabana explains in his overdramatic way that girls struggle to express their feelings, and then he begins rapidly taking notes as the cafe owner gives him some tips. Later, Sauta waits for Mai, psyching himself up to put Takabana's advice into action. When they get to his house, they talk about their day, and Mai mentions the boy to whom she gave her lunch. Sauta claims he's recently been tutoring his cousin, who was one of the candidates. No prizes for guessing who he is. Seeing his moment, Sauta decides to try leaning in for a kiss, thinking hard about Takabana's advice and making quite a scary face. Mai realizes what's happening and braces herself, looking terrified but not wanting to reject him. Perhaps luckily, the moment is interrupted by the arrival of Sauta's sister, who walks in, sees them, and runs away screaming. Back at school, Mai greets her friends, excited that they'll be in the same class again for the semester. Walking to her next lesson, she sees Itsuki on the ground, covered in dogs, his stomach growling again. For the second time, she takes pity on him and offers him her lunch. As he eats, she notices he's got a rip in his sweater from the dogs pawing at him and sews it up. Around Itsuki, she's carelessly pleasant, not worried about her proximity to him or nervous about her words. It's easy and simple. He, though, is obviously affected by it, and has already begun developing a crush on her since she helped him out with the entrance exam. He's flustered as she hands him his sweater and confesses that he spent spring break looking for her, trying to return her bento box which she left behind. She'd forgotten all about it, but is surprised he bothered to spend his free time seeking her out. Itsuki becomes hot under the collar and flees the scene awkwardly, leaving Mai staring dumbfounded after him. Itsuki calls at Sauta's house later on. Surprising nobody, it turns out he's the cousin. He seems to be in a daze as he enters, prompting Sauta to ask after his well-being. He admits that he's fallen in love with someone, which only raises more questions than it answers. In Sauta's room, Itsuki catches sight of his cousin's phone background, a picture of Mai, and comments on it. Sauta snatches back his phone, but stares lovingly at the photo, telling his cousin it's of his girlfriend. Itsuki, surprisingly, is not shaken by this. Rather, he sees it as a challenge. He promises Sauta he's going to go all out to try to win Mai's affection, and he doesn't care that he's got a rival. How charming of him. Sauta is concerned, both for his relationship with his cousin and with Mai. What new trouble will this development bring? At school, a girl on the student council thanks Sauta for getting their work approved by Yukihiro. She offers to take him out to a cafe, but he declines, only interested in getting to Takabana's to ask for help with Itsuki's challenge. Takabana acts in the role of Mai, pretending to argue with Sauta, and ends up advising him not to tell his girlfriend about the situation, because she'll think he doesn't trust her. Sauta goes to Yukihiro next, who is already bored of the issue, and he hasn't even heard about it yet. Sauta recounts how Itsuki and Mai have been getting closer, and how differently Itsuki has been acting, taunting Sauta by eating gifts from Mai in front of him. He complains that his cousin keeps going to places with her. Yukihiro offers Sauta some information about Mai's favorite place, but warns him that it'll come at a steep price. His friend is willing to pay any price necessary to keep Mai, so he agrees, and ends up starring in a video dressed up as a dog. Yukihiro laughs and films him, but keeps his promise and divulges where he should take Mai for their next date. True enough, she's ecstatic when they visit a massive 100-yen shop. She runs through the aisles enthusiastically, looking at everything, more excited than a child at Christmas. Sauta is initially concerned that it's not a good place for a date, but upon seeing Mai's excitement, his worries are washed away. They head back with her bag of purchases and Mai brings up the topic of Itsuki. Sauta somewhat uneasily asks about their relationship, and Mai confirms they're close friends. He considers revealing the truth about Itsuki, but Takabana's advice flashes in his memory, and he hesitates. Just then, Itsuki himself turns up, interrupting their date. Sauta is aggravated to see him, but before he can say anything, the heavens open and the rain begins to pour. Sauta grabs Mai's hand and makes a dash for the train station, followed swiftly by Itsuki, who refuses to be left behind. When they get under cover, Mai is cold, and both boys hurry to be the first to give her their sweater. Itsuki beats Sauta to it, flashing him a triumphant look. Mai tries to call her parents to come and collect her, since they're far away from her house, and the trains are cancelled due to the rain. However, they're unavailable. Swallowing nervously, Sauta suggests she could sleep at his place for the night. Itsuki is staying there as well, and is very pleased with the development. When they get there, Sauta advises her that she'll be staying in his little sister Iki's room. Itsuki is disappointed that she won't be with the boys, but Mai feels much more comfortable with the arrangement, especially since Sauta's parents aren't home. Sauta knocks on Iki's door, wanting to introduce her properly to Mai. However, as soon as she sees her, she slams the door shut, and we soon see why. Her room is a huge mess, with books and clothes scattered everywhere. Mai stands awkwardly amid the clutter as Iki throws things about, trying to pull out the futon for her. She finds a manga drawing of Takabana, and Iki reveals that she works at the cafe. The two girls begin to warm up to each other, sharing stories about their interests as they clean up the room together. The boys help them carry all the trash downstairs, and Itsuki mocks Iki's drawings, prompting her to shove him away angrily. To diffuse the tension, Mai suggests playing cards, but the situation quickly turns on her as Iki demands Itsuki reveal the name of the girl he likes if he loses. Sauta recalls that was an old house rule of theirs, and is anxious about the result, but Itsuki doesn't care. He flashes Sauta a challenging face and promises he'll confess to Mai if he loses. Throughout the game, the tension rises as Sauta desperately hopes Itsuki will win. The two boys are the last two players, and unfortunately, Itsuki ends up being the loser. Just when he's about to confess, though, Sauta remembers another long-forgotten rule and declares Iki the loser, as she accidentally cheated. She doesn't want to reveal the name of the guy she likes, so Itsuki forces her to make dinner for them instead, and she runs off crying, swiftly followed by Mai. Itsuki reminds Sauta malevolently that he's not done. He's not going to back down. At the table, Iki's cooking leaves a lot to be desired. Itsuki bravely takes the first bite, since he was the one who forced her to make it. It makes him feel ill, somewhat unsurprisingly, and he lies on the sofa in the living room, thoroughly regretting his life choices. Mai fusses over him soothingly, while Sauta is sent to get medicine. Thunder rumbles overhead as Sauta despairs over the situation, unsure what to do. Mai and Itsuki share a moment, as she comments on how similar he looks to Sauta without his glasses on. He's about to reach out and take her hand when Sauta comes back in, intervening and pulling her away. Sulkily, Itsuki heads for the bathroom, leaving a confused Mai trying to understand what's going on. She goes to the kitchen with Sauta and can tell how angry he is. He won't tell her what's wrong, though. Just then, thunder rumbles again, and the lights suddenly go out. Sauta heads off to check the fuse box, leaving Mai alone in the dark. She is feeling her way through the house back to the living room when she bumps into someone who embraces her. Naturally, she assumes it's Sauta who would be touching her so intimately, so she leans into it and speaks into his shoulder, confessing that she's worried she's hurt him because of his sudden anger. He won't look her in the eye anymore and she doesn't know why, so she wants to apologize. She expresses how much she likes him, tears falling down her cheeks. The person draws back, though, and Mai is shocked to see that it's not her boyfriend, but Itsuki, to whom she's been pouring out her heart. He walks off without a word. In the days that follow, Mai and Sauta don't speak. She doesn't know what she's done wrong, and he doesn't want to tell her. It seems like Itsuki's plan was successful. She stands by the window, hopefully waiting for Sauta to text her back, but he lies, telling her he has other plans. It's easier to ghost her than to explain why he's upset. Sadly, Mai goes about her school duties, feeling her first love already slipping away from her. Sauta spends some time with the student council, trying to keep his mind off things, and ends up walking with the girl who approached him before. They chat about university and the future, and Sauta reveals to her that he plans to ask Mai to marry him one day. She's impressed that he's thinking so far ahead already, and he assures her that he hasn't said anything to his girlfriend yet, but he plans to. Just then, though, Itsuki and Mai are heading out of their own school and she sees the pair together. She's heartbroken to see Sauta with someone else so soon, misunderstanding the situation entirely, and runs off, followed by Itsuki, who doesn't stop to tell his cousin what happened. The next day, he stops by her classroom to finally give back the bento box, and tentatively Mai inquires about Sauta's well-being. Itsuki is shocked that she's still asking about him, realizing that Mai's feelings for his cousin run deeper than he thought, and promises to ask when he sees him later that day. Sauta, though, is in bed with a cold. He's too sick to contact anyone, and apologizes to Itsuki that he'll have to cancel their tutoring session. Itsuki asks innocently whether Sauta's told Mai about the cold, and upon hearing he hasn't, he maliciously texts her, pretending that his cousin is totally fine and just doesn't want to see her. Receiving that text is the last straw for Mai, who lies in her bed, sobbing that she's lost Sauta and she doesn't even know why. Yukihiro overhears and feels bad for his sister, coming into her room to comfort her. Sauta informed him about his sickness, since he's on the student council, so he reassures Mai about the situation. He calls up Sauta, letting him know he's going to his house to look after him. However, Mai insists on going instead. When she gets there, Sauta is sound asleep, so she touches his forehead to feel his temperature. This sends her into action mode, and she sets about making him a cold compress, cooking him dinner and nursing him back to health. In his half-asleep state he murmurs that he wants her to keep touching him, and she complies, smiling happily as she gets to be by the side of the boy she loves. She leans over, trying to hear more of his muttering, just as Itsuki slams his way into the room, shocked to see Mai there already. He explains that his grandma sent him over to look after his cousin. The two of them head out for a walk, Itsuki silently scheming. Mai innocently asks him what's wrong, when he blurts out that perhaps Sauta didn't even realize it was Mai looking after him. He might have thought it was the other girl. Devastated, as she hadn't even considered the possibility, Mai holds back her tears, running away from him as a fresh wave of heartbreak rolls over her. Itsuki pulls off his glasses, wondering if all the pain he's causing is really worth it. He's beginning to see that Mai really is in love with his cousin, and all he's doing is hurting her by trying to pull them apart. Until now, it was worth it, but how long can the end justify the means? The next day, Mai walks home from school through the park, thinking about Sauda. She wants to call him and check he's okay, but she's struggling with the idea that if they speak, he might ask her to break up with him, and that would be the end of it. She's not ready to let go of him, so she's scared to reach out. In her daydream, she stumbles over a step, losing her shoe, just like she did on the day when she decided she was willing to give love a chance. The arrival of a panting Itsuki pulls her out of her daze. It seems as though he's finally accepted he has no chance with her, as he informs her breathlessly that Sauda will be at the school gate, and if she loves him, she needs to go there. He challenges the depth of her feelings for his cousin, and begs her not to give up. Mai hesitates briefly, but then looks up with determination and takes off at a run. Memories of her and Sauda's relationship run through her head, all the good times they've had together, and the love they share. She's found happiness in him, his smile, his warm laughter, the way he makes her feel. She's not willing to let it end. She can't. She has to fight to get her feelings through to him, to make sure they don't lose everything. She pauses at the gate, watching Sauda walk by with his friends and briefly second-guessing herself. What if he thinks she's a nuisance? What if he asks to break up? But she knows she can't hide from this anymore, and with a deep breath, runs determinedly out into the road, calling Sauda's name. He's nonplussed to see her there, and steps forward as his friends watch on. Unafraid, even with an audience, Mai announces that she really likes Sauda, even though he likes someone else, even though she's sure he hates her. Even so, she loves him, and she wants to thank him for everything he's done for her. With that, she turns and runs, her heart beating out of her chest, not giving a bewildered Sauda a second to respond. As she walks away, wiping away her tears, Sauda runs to catch up to her. He's frustrated because he doesn't know how to express himself, and he knows that she's misunderstood his actions this whole time. He can't believe she genuinely thinks he hates her, and is angry with himself for hurting her once again. He reassures Mai that he loves her, and only her, and he doesn't want their relationship to end. Delighted, she throws herself into his arms and he clutches her tightly, never wanting to let her go again. Some time later, Sauda visits Mai at her home, finally coming into her room for the first time. She's prepared tea on the mat for them, happy to be spending alone time together with her boyfriend. They're still not completely alone though. As soon as there's a lull in conversation, Yukihiro shouts loudly through the wall, checking up on them. Embarrassed, Mai yells back, even as Sauda realizes that the whole time, she's been able to hear everything they were saying. She giggles as he freaks out, and happy with the chaos he's caused, her brother gets up to head out and leave them to themselves. The silence in the room is suddenly deafening, as the couple are fully aware they're really alone. Sauda tries once again to say Mai's name, but still struggles with his nervousness. She, though, has become much more confident after everything they've been through, and encourages him gently, calling him Sauda for the first time. He grins in delight and leans in, and they share their first kiss, a promise of a happy future together.